Welcome to today's lesson on reproduction in animals. In this chapter, we will explore how animals produce new individuals and ensure the continuation of their species. We'll begin with a quick introduction to what reproduction means and why it is essential for all living organisms. Then, we will learn about asexual reproduction, a method in which a single parent is involved and the offspring produced are identical to the parent. We will look at examples from simple organisms like Hydra and amoeba to understand how this process works. Let's get started and discover the amazing ways in which animals reproduce. Reproduction is one of the most important characteristics of living organisms. It is the ability of living beings to produce young ones that look similar to themselves. In animals, we can see that elephants give birth to baby elephants, birds hatch young chicks, and humans produce babies. All these young ones grow and gradually develop the features of their parents. Reproduction ensures that a species continues to exist from one generation to the next. Without reproduction, living organisms would disappear over time. So, reproduction helps in maintaining life on Earth by allowing all species to produce their own kind. Reproduction is one of the most important characteristics of life. Every living organism, whether it is a plant, an animal, or any other life form, has the ability to produce more of its own kind. As you can see in the pictures, plants grow new plants from seeds, animals give birth to young ones, and even aquatic animals like dolphins reproduce to continue their species. All the living beings we see around us today exist because their parents reproduced. So, reproduction helps in maintaining life on Earth by ensuring that living organisms create the next generation. There are two main types of reproduction in living organisms: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, only one parent is involved, and the offspring produced are identical to that parent. Examples include microorganisms like amoeba, where the body simply divides to form new individuals. On the other side, sexual reproduction requires two parents, one male and one female, to produce offspring. In this lesson, we will first learn about asexual reproduction and understand how living organisms can reproduce even with just one parent. Asexual reproduction is a type of reproduction in which only one parent is involved. There is no formation or fusion of gametes, and the young ones produced are identical to the parent. In this slide, you can see several examples of asexual reproduction. A potato develops new shoots from the same parent potato. Yeast reproduces by budding, where a small outgrowth forms and eventually separates. Hydra also produces new individuals through budding. And even plants like ginger can grow new plants from a single parent plant. All these examples show that a single parent is enough to produce new offspring in asexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, the new individuals that are formed are genetically identical to the parent. This means they look the same and have the same characteristics because they come from just one parent. You can see this in microorganisms like bacteria, where a single cell divides to form many identical cells. Similarly, in organisms like Hydra, the new bud that grows on the parent's body is exactly like the original organism. All these examples show that asexual reproduction produces offspring that are true copies or clones of their parent. Asexual reproduction is considered a primitive and simpler method of reproduction compared to sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, Two parents are involved, a male parent that produces the male gamete and a female parent that produces the female gamete. These gametes fuse to form a zygote. But in asexual reproduction, none of this is required. There is no male gamete, no female gamete, and no fusion. A single parent alone can produce new offspring. This makes asexual reproduction much simpler, faster, and easier for many organisms, especially microorganisms and some plants. Asexual reproduction can occur through different processes, and one of the most common methods is binary fission. In binary fission, a single-celled organism divides into two equal and identical daughter cells. This method is usually seen in organisms like amoeba, bacteria, paramecium, and euglena. Let's take a closer look at how binary fission works and why it is such a quick and simple way of reproduction. Binary fission is one of the simplest forms of asexual reproduction. In this process, a single parent cell divides into two daughter cells. As you can see here, the parent cell first grows, then its nucleus divides, and finally the entire cell splits into two identical cells. Each of these daughter cells then grows and becomes a new individual. Binary fission takes place in many single-celled organisms like amoeba, paramecium, and euglena. This method is very fast, which helps these organisms multiply rapidly. Asexual reproduction can occur through different processes, and one of them is multiple fission. In multiple fission, a single parent cell doesn't divide into just two cells. Instead, it splits into many daughter cells at the same time. Let's understand how this process works. In multiple fission, the parent cell undergoes repeated division of its nucleus. All these nuclei collect in the cell, and later the cytoplasm divides around them, forming many small daughter cells. When the parent cell finally breaks open, all the newly formed individuals are released. This process takes place in organisms like amoeba, especially during unfavorable conditions, and in Plasmodium, the parasite that causes malaria. Each of these daughter cells can grow into a new individual, allowing the organism to reproduce rapidly. Asexual reproduction can also occur through a process called budding. In this method, a small outgrowth appears on the parent's body. This outgrowth is known as a bud, and it slowly develops into a new individual. Let's take a closer look at how budding happens. Budding is commonly seen in Hydra and yeast. In Hydra, a small bud forms on the side of the parent's body. The bud grows gradually and eventually develops into a complete hydra. When it becomes fully mature, it detaches and lives as a separate individual. In yeast, a tiny bulge forms on the parent cell. The nucleus divides, and one part enters the bud. The bud then grows and finally separates from the parent cell. So, in budding, a new individual develops from a small protuberance on the parent body. This makes budding a very simple and effective method of asexual reproduction. In budding, the new organism first appears as a small outgrowth, or bud, on the parent's body. As the bud develops, it remains attached to the parent and continues to grow. You can see in the diagram how the bud in Hydra slowly enlarges and forms tentacles. Once it becomes fully developed, it separates from the parent and starts living as an independent organism. The same process happens in yeast, where a small bud forms on the parent cell, grows in size, and finally detaches. This makes budding a simple and effective method of asexual reproduction. Now let's move on to the next important type of reproduction in animals, sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, two parents are involved, a male and a female. Both parents produce special reproductive cells called gametes, which combine to form a new individual. In this part of the lesson, we will learn how sexual reproduction takes place, how gametes fuse, and how a new organism begins to develop. Let's explore the process step by step. Sexual reproduction is a process in which two parents, a male and a female, take part in producing a new individual. Both parents form special reproductive cells called gametes. The male produces the male gamete, or sperm, and the female produces the female gamete, or egg. During reproduction, these two gametes come together and fuse. This fusion results in the formation of a single cell called the zygote. The zygote is the first cell of the new organism. It later divides and develops into a complete individual. So, sexual reproduction involves the formation and fusion of gametes contributed by two different parents. In sexual reproduction, the offspring produced are not genetically identical to the parents. This is very different from asexual reproduction, where the young ones look exactly like the parent because they come from a single individual. In sexual reproduction, traits from both the male and the female combine. That's why the young ones show a mix of characteristics, making each one unique. Whether it's chicks with their mother hen, puppies with their parent dog, or a foal with its horse parent. All these young ones differ from their parents in appearance and behavior. This genetic variation is an important advantage of sexual reproduction. It helps species adapt better to their environment over time. In multicellular organisms, special cells called gametes are produced by the reproductive organs. In males, the reproductive organs produce the male gametes, commonly known as sperm. In females, the reproductive organs produce the female gametes, which are the eggs or ova. These reproductive organs play an important role in sexual reproduction because they form the gametes that later fuse to create a new individual. So, both male and female reproductive systems are essential for the process of sexual reproduction to take place. In sexual reproduction, the male parent produces special reproductive cells called sperms. These male gametes are formed in the male reproductive organs, mainly in the testes. The testes are responsible for producing millions of sperms, each with a head and a tail that help them move. These sperms later take part in fertilization by fusing with the female gamete. So, the male reproductive system plays a key role in forming the male gametes required for sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, the female parent forms special reproductive cells called eggs or ova. These female gametes are produced in the female reproductive organs, mainly in the ovaries. The ovaries release eggs at regular intervals. Each egg has the ability to fuse with a male gamete during fertilization to form a new individual. So, the female reproductive system plays a very important role by producing the female gametes needed for the process of reproduction. During sexual reproduction, the sperm from the male and the ovum from the female unite. This fusion forms a single cell called the fertilized egg, or the zygote. The zygote is the very first cell of the new organism. It begins to divide repeatedly and slowly develops into an embryo, and later into a fully formed baby. As development continues inside the mother's body, the embryo grows into an offspring. Once the baby is fully developed, it is born and continues growing outside the mother's body. So, the zygote is the starting point of a new life, which eventually becomes a complete individual. In some organisms, such as the earthworm, both types of gametes are produced by the same individual. Earthworms have male reproductive organs that produce sperms and female reproductive organs that produce eggs. Because a single earthworm has both male and female reproductive organs, it is called a hermaphrodite. Even though each earthworm has both organs, two earthworms still need to exchange sperms for reproduction to take place. This helps in producing healthy offspring. Do you know? Parthenogenesis is a special type of asexual reproduction where female organisms produce eggs that can grow into new individuals without fertilization. This means no male gamete or sperm is involved at all. Parthenogenesis occurs naturally in several organisms such as aphids, Daphnia, and rotifers. These organisms can quickly increase their population because every female can produce offspring on her own. Look at the images shown: aphids on a leaf, Daphnia underwater, and rotifers, all of them can reproduce through parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis does not occur only in animals, it also takes place in many plants. Some fruits like pineapple, grapes, and banana develop without fertilization. These fruits are produced without seeds because the plant forms new fruit directly from the female reproductive tissues. This process helps farmers grow seedless varieties that we commonly eat. So, parthenogenesis is a natural process that helps both animals and plants reproduce even when fertilization does not happen. In many social insects, such as honeybees and ants, reproduction works in a very special way. These insects live in groups where different members perform different roles. The colony usually has three types of individuals: males, workers, and the queen. The queen is the only fertile female in the colony. She lays thousands of eggs. The workers are also females, but they cannot produce eggs. They take care of the hive, collect food, and protect the colony. Here's the interesting part. The fertilized eggs develop into female workers or new queens depending on how they are raised and what food they receive. So, in these social insects, the way the eggs are treated decides whether the insect becomes a worker or a queen. Did you know? Different animals produce very different numbers of offspring each year. For example, a rabbit can produce around 10 to 30 offspring in a year. But a tiny fruit fly can produce nearly 900 offspring in the same time. Animals that produce fewer offspring, like rabbits or humans, usually invest more time, energy, and resources in caring for each baby. They focus on nurturing, protecting, and helping each offspring grow safely. On the other hand, animals that produce many offspring, like fruit flies, give birth to large numbers but provide very little parental care. So, the number of offspring an animal has is closely related to how much care each one receives. In this section, we are going to explore reproduction in animals, focusing on the different reproductive patterns seen across the animal kingdom. Every animal species has its own unique way of producing young ones. Some produce many offspring, while others produce only a few. Some offer extensive parental care, while others provide none at all. Understanding these patterns helps us see how animals survive, adapt, and continue their species. Let's begin learning about the fascinating world of animal reproduction. Animals reproduce in different ways, and these methods can be grouped into three reproductive patterns. These patterns are based on where fertilization happens and where the embryo develops. The first type is external fertilization with external development. Here, fertilization takes place outside the body, and the embryo also develops outside. This is common in animals like fish and frogs. The second type is internal fertilization with external development. In this case, fertilization occurs inside the female's body, but the developing embryo grows outside, usually in an egg. Birds and reptiles follow this pattern. The third type is internal fertilization with internal development. Here, both fertilization and development happen inside the mother's body, providing greater protection and care to the growing embryo. Mammals, including humans, belong to this group. These three patterns help different animals survive and reproduce in their own environments. External fertilization and external development. In frogs, reproduction happens through external fertilization. This means that both the sperms and eggs are released by the parents outside their bodies into the surrounding water. Once the gametes are released, fertilization takes place in the water itself. The fertilized egg, called the zygote, then begins to grow and develop. After some time, the zygote develops into a tiny, swimming tadpole, which you can see here inside the jelly-like eggs. These tadpoles continue to develop outside the parent's body until they grow into young frogs. So in frogs, both fertilization and development occur externally, making them an example of external fertilization and external development. For external fertilization to work successfully, both the male and female must release their gametes into the water at the same time and in the same place. This is very important because the gametes need to meet each other in the water for fertilization to happen. They also release their gametes in large numbers. This increases the chances that at least some eggs will be fertilized, because many of them can get washed away or eaten by other animals. So, in external fertilization, timing, location, and large quantities of gametes are the key factors that help the process succeed. Now we are going to discuss about reproductive pattern to that is internal fertilization and external development. In animals like birds, the platypus, and the echidna, reproduction involves internal fertilization followed by external development. Birds and these rare egg-laying mammals form eggs inside the female body but lay them outside, where development continues. The pictures here show a platypus and an echidna, two unique mammals that lay eggs just like birds. In birds, the process begins when the male transfers sperms into the female body. This ensures that fertilization will take place inside the female, giving better protection to the developing zygote. Once the sperms enter the female body, fertilization occurs internally. The male sperm unites with the female egg, forming a single cell called the zygote. This fertilized egg will now receive everything it needs for development. After the zygote is formed, it begins to travel through the oviduct. As it moves, it gets covered with layers of secretion, reserve food, and finally a hard protective shell. These layers supply nourishment and keep the growing embryo safe from harm. The first covering forms from secretions of the oviduct. Next, thick layers of reserve food, mainly the yolk and albumin, surround the zygote. Finally, a hard shell is added, which protects the egg and allows air to pass through tiny pores. This complete structure is what we commonly see as a bird's egg. After these protective layers have fully formed, the egg is laid by the female bird. At this point, the development of the chick continues inside the egg, safely supported by the food and protection already provided. Once the egg has been laid, the embryo inside begins to grow into a chick. The heat provided by the mother during incubation helps the embryo develop. Over time, The tiny embryo uses the yolk as nourishment and slowly transforms into a fully developed chick, ready to hatch. Now we will discuss about reproductive pattern 3, internal fertilization and internal development. In humans and other mammals, the entire process of fertilization and development happens inside the female body. First, the male and female gametes meet, and fertilization takes place. This forms a single cell, called the zygote. The zygote then begins to divide repeatedly as it moves through the female reproductive tract. These dividing cells gradually form a ball-like structure, and soon after, the embryo is formed. Inside the uterus, the embryo attaches to the wall and continues to grow safely. Over time, it develops into a fetus, protected and nourished inside the mother's body until birth. This internal development ensures greater safety, proper nutrition, and stable conditions for the growing young one. In this section, we will explore how animals create new life through the process of reproduction. We'll begin by understanding the reproductive system, the special set of organs in animals that helps them produce offspring. This system plays a key role in ensuring that life continues from one generation to the next. Let's begin our journey and discover how wonderfully nature has designed living beings to reproduce. Let us now study the reproductive systems of human beings. We will begin with the male reproductive system. Male reproductive system. The male reproductive system is made up of several important organs. It includes the testes, the scrotum, the sperm duct, the urethra, and the penis. Inside each testis, millions of tiny reproductive cells called sperms are produced. The scrotum, a pouch of skin, holds and protects the testes and keeps them at a temperature suitable for sperm development. Once sperms are formed, they move into a long tube called the sperm duct. The sperm duct carries sperms towards the urethra. The urethra is a common passage inside the penis. The penis is a muscular structure that helps transfer sperms into the female body. The urethra carries urine as well as semen. And semen is the fluid that contains sperms. However, urine and semen never pass through the urethra at the same time. The body switches the passage depending on the need. Now, let us learn about the structure of a sperm cell. A sperm is much smaller than the ovum and cannot be seen with our eyes. It can only be seen under a microscope. A sperm cell has three main parts: the head, the middle piece, and the tail. The head contains the nucleus, which carries the father's genetic information. The tip of the head produces special enzymes. These enzymes help the sperm to penetrate the female ovum during fertilization. The middle piece is packed with energy-producing structures. This energy helps the sperm to move actively inside the female body. The tail helps in movement, allowing the sperm to swim forward toward the ovum. So, the unique shape of the sperm, head, middle piece, and tail helps it perform its role in fertilization. Let's begin exploring the female reproductive system. One of the main parts is the ovary. The ovaries are responsible for producing the eggs, also called ova. Each month, one ovary releases a mature egg. This is the first step in the process of reproduction. Next, we look at the vagina. The vagina is the part where sperms enter the female body during reproduction. From here, the sperms travel upward toward the egg to begin the journey of fertilization. Now we move to the oviducts, also known as the fallopian tubes. This is a very important part because the oviducts are the actual site of fertilization. Here, the sperm meets the egg, and fertilization takes place if both meet at the right time. Once the egg is fertilized, it moves into the uterus. The uterus has thick, soft walls where the growing embryo gets attached. This attachment is called implantation. The uterus provides protection and nourishment to the developing embryo. As the embryo grows, it develops into a fetus, safely protected inside the uterus. The uterus supports the fetus throughout pregnancy, helping it grow until birth. The ovaries do more than just produce eggs. They also release hormones that control the production of ova and regulate the entire reproductive cycle. These hormones also play a vital role in the maintenance of pregnancy. They ensure that the environment inside the uterus remains suitable for the growth and development of the fetus. Do you know how in vitro fertilization, or IVF, works? IVF is a special scientific method that helps couples who are unable to have a baby naturally. It involves bringing the egg and sperm together outside the female body in a controlled laboratory setting. In IVF, the collected eggs are placed in a dish. Sperms are then carefully added to these eggs. Here, fertilization takes place outside the female body. This means the egg and sperm join in the lab instead of inside the oviduct. After fertilization, the egg begins to divide and develop. This early stage of development is called the embryo. Even this formation of the embryo happens outside the female body, under the supervision of doctors. Once a healthy embryo is formed, it is gently transferred into the woman's uterus. Doctors use special medical instruments to place the embryo safely inside the uterus. If the embryo attaches to the uterine wall and begins to grow, pregnancy can occur. After the embryo is carefully placed into the woman's uterus, the goal is to allow it to grow and develop naturally. With proper care and medical support, this process aims to establish a successful pregnancy, giving hopeful parents a chance to welcome a healthy baby into their lives. Do you know who the world's first test tube baby was? Her name is Louise Brown, and she was born in 1978. Her birth marked a major scientific breakthrough because she was the first baby conceived through the IVF method. The term test tube comes from the glass tubes used in science laboratories. These tubes are commonly used for experiments, and that is why the name test tube baby became popular. It is simply a nickname linked to the laboratory procedure. Because IVF involves fertilizing the egg outside the female body, babies conceived through this method are often referred to as test tube babies. It's just another way of saying that they were conceived with the help of modern medical technology. Now we will explore two important concepts. First, how fertilization takes place, and second, how the embryo develops after fertilization. These processes are essential for the continuation of life in animals, and understanding them will help us learn how new organisms are formed. Fertilization is a very important step in reproduction. In humans and many other animals, fertilization takes place in the initial part of the oviduct. This is the tube that connects the ovary to the uterus. Fertilization is the fusion of the sperm and the egg. When a sperm successfully meets the egg, the two cells combine to form a single new cell. This process happens inside the body of the female, so it is known as internal fertilization. During fertilization, the nuclei of the sperm and the egg fuse together. They form one single nucleus, which means the genetic material from both parents has now combined. The single cell formed after the fusion is called a zygote. This zygote is the very first cell of the new organism. The zygote contains the nuclear material from both the father and the mother. This means it carries traits and characteristics from both parents. And that is why a child shows characteristics of both the father and the mother, because the zygote inherits genetic information from both. After fertilization, the zygote begins its journey through the oviduct. Almost immediately, it starts dividing, first into 2 cells, then 4, 8, 16, and continues multiplying rapidly. As these repeated divisions continue, the zygote forms a cluster of cells. This growing cluster is called an embryo. The embryo slowly moves toward the uterus, also known as the womb. Once it reaches the uterus, it attaches itself to the lining of the uterine wall. Here, it continues dividing into many more cells and starts developing into a baby. As the embryo continues to grow inside the uterus, it slowly begins to develop different body parts. The head, eyes, hands, legs, and other organs start forming step by step. This stage shows how the tiny cluster of cells gradually turns into a developing baby. When the body parts become more clearly developed, the embryo is now called a fetus. At this stage, the fetus continues to grow and mature in the mother's womb. When the fetus is finally born, it is called an infant. This marks the beginning of a new life outside the mother's body. Did you know that one sperm can fertilize only one ovum? This means every fertilized egg begins with a single sperm joining a single egg. Sometimes, 2 ova are released from the ovaries at the same time. If both of these ova get fertilized by 2 different sperms, something interesting happens. In such cases, non-identical twins are born. These twins are not exactly alike. They may look different from each other, just like any other siblings. Non-identical twins can be 2 brothers, 2 sisters, or a brother and a sister. Normally, one sperm fertilizes one ovum. But sometimes, something special happens during the development of the zygote. If a single fertilized egg, or zygote, splits into 2 separate embryos, then identical twins are formed. These twins look almost exactly the same because they have the same set of genes. Genes are tiny structures present inside the nucleus of every cell. They are responsible for the characteristics we inherit from our parents, such as height, eye color, hair type, and many more traits. Now we will explore 2 important topics. First, we will learn how hens lay eggs and understand what happens inside the hen's body before an egg is formed. Next, we will look at the 2 major groups of animals. Viviparous animals, which give birth to young ones, and oviparous animals, which lay eggs. In hens, the process of fertilization happens inside the female's body. The rooster's sperm meets the hen's ovum internally, just like it does in humans. However, hens are very different when it comes to development. Unlike humans, where the baby develops inside the mother's body, in hens, the development of the embryo is external, meaning it takes place outside the body. After fertilization, the zygote begins to divide into many cells. While dividing, it slowly travels down through the oviduct. As the developing egg moves downward, the egg shell begins to form around it. The shell is one of the protective layers that keep the embryo safe. The shell is made of a mineral called calcite, which is a crystalline form of calcium carbonate. This shell forms in the lower part of the oviduct, just before the egg is laid. Inside the body of the hen, you can see the developing egg moving through the oviduct, gradually forming its protective shell. Once the shell is complete, the hen lays the egg. Once the hen lays the fertilized eggs, they need a constant warm temperature to grow properly. The hen provides this warmth by sitting on the eggs, keeping them heated from outside. This process of keeping the eggs warm is called incubation. Inside the egg, the tiny embryo slowly continues to grow and develop. This development takes place for 21 days, during which the chick forms feathers, beak, legs, and all its body parts. After the development is complete, the chick is ready to come out. It breaks the eggshell using its small egg tooth, and finally, the chick hatches out of the egg. This process is known as hatching. Now, let's learn about two important types of animals based on how their young ones develop: viviparous animals and oviparous animals. By now, you already understand that in some animals, the development of the young ones happens inside the mother's body, while in others, it occurs outside the body, usually inside an egg. With this idea in mind, we can easily classify animals as viviparous or oviparous. Viviparous animals are those in which the female gives birth to young ones. The word viviparous comes from vivis, which means alive. In these animals, the baby develops inside the mother's body and is born alive instead of hatching from an egg. This is a special feature that makes mammals different from many other animal groups. Examples include horses, cats, cows, and dogs. All of these animals nourish their young ones inside the body and give birth to fully formed babies. Oviparous animals are those that lay eggs. The word oviparous comes from ova, which means egg. In these animals, the embryo develops outside the mother's body, usually inside a protective egg. The mother lays the egg, and the young one continues to grow until it is ready to hatch. This method of reproduction is common in fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and many insects. You can see examples here: fish guarding their eggs, insects laying egg clusters, birds sitting on eggs, frogs protecting their eggs, and reptiles like crocodiles laying eggs in nests. In this section, we will explore two fascinating ideas related to reproduction in animals. First, we'll look at the journey of young ones as they grow into adults, understanding how different organisms pass through various stages of life. Then, we'll learn about the amazing story of Dolly, the first cloned mammal, and discover how cloning became a breakthrough in science. Every young organism grows and gradually develops into an adult. This happens whether the young one is born directly, like an infant, or hatched from an egg, like a chick or a tadpole. In some animals, the young ones look very different from the adults. For example, a tadpole has a tail and looks like a small fish, but as it grows, it slowly changes its shape and becomes a frog. Similarly, a butterfly begins its life as a tiny caterpillar. The caterpillar eats leaves, grows bigger, and finally transforms into a beautiful butterfly with wings. These changes happen because the adults have many features, like legs, lungs, and wings that are not present in the larval or tadpole stages. This process of changing from a young form to an adult is an important part of the life cycle in many animals. Every living organism begins life as a young one and gradually grows into an adult. This happens whether the baby is born directly, like a puppy, or hatches from an egg, like a duckling. But the way young ones look can be very different from the adults. For example, a tadpole looks like a small fish with a long tail. As it grows, the tail slowly disappears and legs begin to develop, and eventually it becomes a frog. In insects too, the young one may look very different. A caterpillar crawls and eats leaves, but after its transformation, it becomes a beautiful butterfly with wings. These changes happen because the young stage does not have many of the features that the adult stage has. So, in many animals, the journey from young one to adult involves major changes in body structure and appearance. Some animals undergo a very big change in their body structure and habits as they grow. This major transformation is called metamorphosis. For example, a butterfly begins its life as an egg, then hatches into a caterpillar. After feeding and growing, the caterpillar forms a pupa and finally emerges as a beautiful adult butterfly. In the same way, a frog's life starts as eggs, which hatch into small tadpoles. These tadpoles live in water, breathe through gills, and have a tail. As they grow, legs appear, lungs develop, and the tail disappears, turning the tadpole into an adult frog. So, metamorphosis is a marked and sometimes abrupt change that happens during an animal's life cycle, helping it move from a young stage to its adult form. In the life cycle of an amphibian, the first stage begins when eggs are laid in water. After some time, a tadpole emerges from the egg and starts swimming freely in water. A young tadpole looks very different from an adult frog. It has gills, a tail, and a small circular mouth to help it survive underwater. As the tadpole grows, it reaches a stage where it begins a remarkable process called metamorphosis. Metamorphosis begins with the growth of the hind legs, followed by the development of the front legs. Next, the lungs develop, and the tadpole starts swimming up to the water surface to breathe air. During this time, the intestine becomes shorter to adapt to a carnivorous diet, just like an adult frog. Slowly, the tail becomes smaller, the body changes shape, and finally, the tadpole transforms into an adult frog, ready to live both on land and in water. As the tadpole continues to grow, an important change takes place. The long tail that helped it swim is slowly absorbed by the body. This process happens during the final stages of metamorphosis. Finally, the tail tadpole transforms into a tailless frog. With fully developed legs and lungs, it is now ready to live on land as an adult frog. Now let us learn about Dolly, the first ever cloned mammal, and understand how cloning changed scientific history. Cloning is the process of producing an exact copy of a cell, a living part, or even an entire organism. It was Sir Ian Wilmot and his team who successfully performed cloning for the first time at the Roslin Institute in Scotland. Dolly, the cloned sheep, was born on 5 July 1996, becoming the first mammal to be cloned in the history of science. Let's look at how Dolly, the first cloned mammal, was created. The process began by collecting a cell from the mammary gland of a female Finn Dorset sheep. This cell contained the complete set of genetic information needed for cloning. Next, an egg cell was taken from a Scottish blackface ewe. The nucleus of this egg was carefully removed, so it no longer had its own genetic material. Then, the nucleus from the mammary gland cell was inserted into the enucleated egg. This created a new egg cell that now carried the genetic information of the Finn-Dorset sheep. This modified egg was then implanted into the uterus of a Scottish blackface ewe. After normal development inside the surrogate mother, the cloned sheep, Dolly, was born. She was an exact genetic copy of the Finn-Dorset sheep from which the original cell was taken. Although Dolly was born from a Scottish blackface ewe, scientists found that she was genetically identical to the Finn-Dorset sheep from which the nucleus had been taken. Dolly grew into a healthy clone of the Finn-Dorset sheep, showing that the cloning process had been successful. Sadly, Dolly died on 14 February 2003 due to a lung disease, bringing an end to the life of the world's first successfully cloned mammal. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more educational content your way. See you in the next video.